We have already learnt about what a voice is. So voice is that form of the verb which shows whether the subject of the verb is the doer or agent of the action denoted by the verb or not. Now voices are of two types, the active voice and the passive voice. Now in the active voice, the subject is the doer of the action, whereas in the passive voice, the subject is the receiver of the action. So in an active voice, a sentence reads like, Sam kicked the ball, where Sam is the subject as well as the doer of the action, that is kicked. Now if I have to express the same thing in the passive voice, our sentence becomes, the ball was kicked by Sam. So here the ball is the subject of the sentence, but it is not the doer. It is the receiver of the action. Now, when we change the voice of a sentence, the tense remains the same. So in active to passive, the transformation will not cause any change in the tense of the sentences. Secondly, the verb agrees with the number and person of the subject of the sentence. Now, we have seen that to convert a sentence in the active voice to a sentence in the passive voice, we need to note that the verb takes an object. So, the verb should always be transitive. Now, let us look at some more examples. The sentence reads, the teacher gives the best student a medal. Now, this sentence is in the active voice. Here, the verb is gives and the subject is the teacher. Now, what is the object in this case? Now, if I question, the teacher gives what? My answer is a medal. So, a medal is an object of this sentence. Now, if I question, the teacher gives whom the medal? My answer would be the best student. So, in this sentence, we see that we have two objects. So, the verb gives takes two objects, the indirect object and the direct object. What is the direct object? A medal. And what is the indirect object? The best student. Now we have seen the object takes the subject position in the passive, but here we have two objects. So how do we write it in the passive voice? Well, since we have two objects, we can choose to write it in two different ways in the passive voice. So in the passive voice, one way of writing it is, the best student is given a medal by the teacher. So here our subject is the best student. So we have taken the indirect object from the active voice and placed it in the subject position. Then our verb is given. In the active voice, the verb was gives. So in the passive voice, it takes the form is given. Then we have the direct object, a medal. After that, we have used the preposition by, and finally, this preposition by is followed by the doer of the action. So, the doer is the teacher. So, teacher comes after the verb in the passive voice. Now, what is the other way of writing it? A medal is given to the best student by the teacher. So here what we have done is, we have taken the direct object as our subject. So here a medal was the direct object in the active voice. Now we have placed it in the subject position in the passive voice. Then the verb still remains is given. After that, to the best student. Now note, we have added a preposition to before the indirect object, the best student. Then we have the preposition by and the doer, the teacher. So remember one thing carefully. if you have to begin the sentence with the direct object and place the indirect object after the verb in the passive voice, we often require a suitable preposition before the indirect object to make the sentence correct. Now, if I write the sentence as a medal is given by the teacher to the best student, even this is a correct way of writing. So note, these two sentences are almost the same. The difference is that in this case, to the best student is written just after the verb, whereas in this case, we have mentioned the doer after the verb and then we have added the object part. Since we have two prepositional phrases after the verb, so we can interchange their positions. So both of them are correct. So what do we see from this example? We see that any one of the objects can be made the subject of the passive verb, and secondly, in some cases a preposition is used in the passive voice before the noun, that is the indirect object, in the active voice. So we have to remember these rules very carefully. Now look at this example. Mother made me a delicious porridge. Now here, what is the verb? Made. And what is the object? Mother made whom a delicious porridge? Me. So this is one object. And mother made what? A delicious porridge. So even in this case, we see that the verb made takes two objects, indirect object and direct object. Me is the indirect object, a delicious porridge is the direct object. So in this case as well, if we want to write the sentence in passive voice, we can choose to write it in two different ways. So the sentence reads, a delicious porridge was made for me by mother. Note that first we have taken the object in the subject position in passive voice. Then we have put the verb. Now the form of the verb in the passive voice is be plus past participle form. So in the active voice, the verb was made. Now in the passive voice, it takes the form was made. After that, what we have done? We have added the preposition for. So we have already learned that for mentioning the noun in the indirect object in the passive voice, we often need a preposition. So here the preposition is for. After that, we mention the pronoun me, which is also another object in the active voice, and then we mention the doer. And for mentioning the doer, we need a preposition before the doer, that is by. Now, if we had to take the indirect object as our subject, then what would be the sentence? I was made a delicious porridge by mother. Now, what have we done here? I becomes the subject. In the active voice, we had the object pronoun me. So, in passive voice, that will get converted to the subject pronoun. So, me becomes I, followed by the verb was made. After that, a delicious porridge, and then we use the preposition by, followed by the doer, mother. So, these are the two ways in which we can write this sentence in passive voice. Now, just as we have used the preposition for here, there are many other verbs which will require the preposition for after it and before the indirect object. So, such verbs are bring, buy, leave, send, make, get, etc. The selectors made Rahim the captain of the team. Now, in this sentence, can you find the object? Well, the verb is made. The selectors made whom the captain of the team? My answer is Rahim. So Rahim is the object of the verb made in this case. Now, do you think the captain of the team is also an object? No, because the selectors made what? The captain of the team. That is not the correct answer. The selectors made Rahim what? The captain of the team. So this part, the captain of the team, is not the object of the verb made. It is the object complement. So it comes after the object Rahim and completes the meaning of the sentence. So in this case, Rahim is the only object and the captain of the team is the object complement. Now, if we have to change this sentence into the passive form, then how do we write it? We write it as Rahim was made the captain of the team by the selectors. So in this case, our object becomes the subject. So Rahim is the subject followed by the verb was made. The made in active voice will be turned to was made. We have already learned that. Then comes the object complement, the captain of the team just after the verb, followed by the preposition by and the doer by the selectors. So note that the object complement comes after the verb and not before the verb. Now we could have written this sentence as Rahim was made the captain of the team without mentioning the doer, because we know that such decisions as in selection of a team is done by the selectors. So what do we learn from here? The object complement of a transitive verb is retained and does not change its position in the passive voice. So it's retained in its own position. It will not become the subject. It will come after the verb always. Now look at this example. The people made him the king of the land. So what is the verb in this case? Made. Now if I ask, the people made whom the king of the land? My answer is him. So him is the object in this case. And what is this part? The king of the land? It is answering the question, the people made him what? So it is the object complement. So our sentence in the passive voice becomes, he was made the king of the land by the people. Now over here, what do we see? Our object was him. Now since him is in the object position, we have used an object pronoun. But if it is in the subject position, then we need to change it into the subject pronoun. So we have used he instead of him. Then the verb was made followed by the object complement of the active voice, the king of the land. Then to mention the doer, we need a preposition by and then the doer, that is the people. So our sentence becomes, he was made the king of the land by the people. Now, can you begin the sentence with I without changing the meaning? What is the sentence? My father gifted me a new bicycle. Now in this sentence, what do we see? We have the verb gifted and then the object is me and a new bicycle. So here the indirect object is me and the direct object is a new bicycle. So there are two objects. Now we know that me is the object pronoun of I. So if we turn this me into I, then our purpose will be solved. So to do that, what we need to do is simply write this sentence in the passive voice. So if I begin my sentence with the indirect object, how will we write? I was gifted a new bicycle by my father. So I put this me in the subject position. It changes to I. Then the verb becomes was gifted, because in passive form gifted will change to was gifted. Then comes the object, a new bicycle, which we have from the active voice, and then we have the doer, and for that we have to use the preposition by. So the sentence becomes I was gifted a new bicycle by my father. Now since we see after the verb there are two parts, a new bicycle by my father, so we can change their positions. Each of them would be a correct way of writing the sentence. Now look at this sentence. The coach makes him run long distances regularly. Now in this sentence our verb is makes. The coach makes whom run long distances? My answer is him. So him is the object in this case. What are we going to do? He will become the subject in this case. So the object comes in the subject position. So the sentence is, he is made to run long distances regularly by the coach. Now here the first change was to make the object into a subject. After that we have changed the verb form. Makes becomes is made. Now note this preposition to run long distances regularly. In the active voice I had simply run long distances regularly. If you read this sentence carefully, it actually reads, the coach makes him to run long distances regularly. So there is a to hidden in this sentence which we have not mentioned. So this verb run is an infinitive, but the to is not mentioned in this case. But whenever we are going to write the sentence in the passive voice, we need to place this to before the verb run to make the sentence construction correct. So our sentence becomes, he is made to run long distances regularly, and after that we mention the doer, that is the coach, and for that we also know that we need a preposition just before the doer. So what do we learn from here? When there is an infinitive without to in the active voice, as in run in this case, it is an infinitive without to, then in the passive voice it becomes an infinitive with to. So in the passive also run is an infinitive but with to. So if there is an infinitive without to in the active voice, it will turn into an infinitive with to in the passive voice. Now all sentences in the active voice cannot be changed into passive voice. If we have a sentence like this, it had started snowing heavily. Now what is the verb here? Had started. Now is there an object in this case? Well, some of you might think snowing heavily is an object in this case, or snowing is an object, but it is not. Why? Because you see, snowing heavily is referring back to this pronoun it. So this action had started does not have a receiver. Hence, it does not have an object. So this is a sentence with an intransitive verb. So an intransitive verb never takes an object. Now if you look at a sentence like this, the old lady seems very tired. Now here The verb is seems. Again, you might have this misconception that if I ask the question, the lady seems what? Then very tired is my answer. This verb seems is actually showing the state of being of this old lady. So the verb seems does not have an object. In fact, verbs like looks, appears, seems never take an object after them. So they are always intransitive. So you must remember that only transitive verbs can be converted to passive voice. These two sentences can never have a passive form. Now, some intransitive verbs may become transitive by having a preposition added to them. Such verbs can have a passive form. So we need to be careful about this thing. So let us look at this example. They laughed at the old man. Now here, laughed is the verb. Now the verb laughed by itself is an intransitive verb. It never takes an object. But here you see, we have added a preposition at after this intransitive verb laughed. Now if I question, they laughed at what? So I have an answer, the old man. Now this verb laughed at works like a transitive verb and it takes an object, the old man. So I can easily write it in the passive voice. So my sentence in the passive voice becomes, the old man was laughed at. So the old man comes in the subject position followed by the verb form was laughed and then we mention the preposition at. Now since in this case our doer is the pronoun they, we can choose to omit it in the passive voice. They are excited. Now in this case, we have the plural form of the be verb and in the present tense are. Now the be verb always tells us the state of being of a person. So the be verb will never take an object. So they are excited is a sentence where we have an intransitive verb in the form of are. Now look at this sentence. We have a holiday on Sunday. Here, have is the main verb. And if you try to change this sentence into passive voice, you will see that such a change is not possible. Why? Because the verbs be and have, when used as main verbs, do not have a passive form. So whenever you see the be verb or have verb used as main verbs in any sentence, we will note that such sentences can never be written in passive voice. So, what did we learn today? Today we have seen that when we transform a sentence from active voice to passive voice, some important changes take place. What are they? First, the subject and the object exchange their positions. Secondly, the verb takes on the suitable be plus past participle form and it also agrees in number and person with the subject. Also, a preposition is used before the agent or doer in the passive voice. However, at times in passive voice, the doer may or may not be mentioned. Also, if the sentence in active voice has two objects, then it can be written in the passive voice in two ways. So today we have learned some of the rules as to how to change a sentence in the active voice into its passive form. Also, we have seen cases where we cannot have a passive form. So now that you have learned the different ways of changing a sentence from active to passive, you can take up as many examples as possible and see if you can change the sentences in the passive voice correctly. We shall soon learn more about voices. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. You can also register for free at deltastep.com or download the DeltaStep app to get all learning resources as per ICSE, CBSE, IB, Cambridge or any other curriculum. Over 5,000 amazing lectures across maths, science, English and social science. Our unique interactive video technology keeps you engaged and our iDictionary feature allows you to quickly revise any concept. Master each topic at your own pace with our adaptive practice technology and 1 million plus questions. Get instant answers and detailed solutions. Be exam ready by taking unlimited mock tests. Performance analysis along with actionable feedback. Personal tutors to resolve your slightest of doubts. That's not all. You can also win amazing prizes like PlayStation, iPad, watches and many more along with certificates through our Earn As You Learn program. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.